It's That Skydive Sim Guy podcast where we discuss skydiving stories as well as give some great tips, whether it's the real world or the virtual world. This podcast is made possible by Skydive Sim, the world's most advanced skydiving simulator. Hey, it's That Skydive Sim Guy here today with my guest Gary Smith. Gary, how are you doing?
I am fantastic, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Gary, you are a filmmaker, skydiver. You are the creator, I would say writer, director, lead actor, and I'm sure a lot of other titles for SkyFly the movie, right? Tell us about that.
Oh, man. What a wild ride that's been. Well, SkyFly is a comedy drama about a skydiver named Danny Jones who drinks too much and is afraid to skydive. He had a very scary parachute malfunction, and so his rivals at the drop zone who love to give him a hard time, kind of douchebaggy types, challenge him to a roller hockey tournament since they know he can't compete in the sky anymore. And so Danny has to assemble his team, his crew of misfits that live and work at the drop zone so they can compete. And along Danny's road to sobriety and overcoming some fears, he falls in love with his Brazilian jump coach, Rafaela, who's training him to get his ass back up there.
That's awesome. Any of this as a personal story for you, or?
Yeah, big time. You know, I was taught to write what you know, and so SkyFly is heavily inspired by true events. You know, it's not that I think that I have the most incredible or amazing life, you know, but I think if you take most people's lives and, you know, condense it into a 90-minute film, it would be entertaining. And so it was also incredibly therapeutic to kind of put it all into a story and, you know, and it just that it had meaning to me. And so, yeah, I drew for a lot from personal experiences.
That's great. I mean, I loved it. I thought that opening sequence with the bike and your drone shots and the cops chasing you, that was pretty amazing. Sweet. I mean, I was watching it to see what happens next. So
Thank you.
Definitely a good watch. Also, being a skydiver, watching a movie that includes skydiving in it is always great to see.
Right.
So those skydiving scenes, for example, tell me about that. Did you do any of those stunts?
Oh, heck yeah. At least the belly ones that I was in, you know, there's that one sequence where they're doing the head down, super badass stuff. I'm not there at all. We had a great dude, Chris Dare. He's awesome. He found a few of our doubles for that, and he led the charge on that. But Corey Molina and myself filmed the other stuff, and he was the cinematographer and editor and co-producer for the film. And we actually met skydiving, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and just kind of very lightly stayed in touch, you know. And so we did the skydiving stuff together. Originally, he had the red on his head, and you know we were going all in. And he got the little mini wing things, and eventually we went with just whatever the newest GoPro was because it was just getting better footage and it was just easier. And he didn't feel like he was going to snap his neck on every jump. And so, and real fun. One of the actors got his license to do his own stunts. Jacob Maya, the guy that played the character of Mickey. That kind of oddball, sober guy. And I think he said, you know, it was kind of something that was always, this was kind of the catalyst that really got him to go down there and do it. But, you know, he didn't have his license. We shot the movie in November. And by the time we were shooting the skydiving stuff and a few months later, he had done 25. And I think his jump 26 was us filming for the movie. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. So he did a first stunt on his first after graduation jump.
Yeah.
That not many people can say that, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That brings me actually to ask you. So were you a skydiver first and came up with the movie, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, so my first skydive, if we want to go way back real quick, I was 18. I'm from NorCal, so it was in Lodi, crazy cowboys up there in Lodi. And that was my first time on an airplane. And I was just like, woo, wow, this is crazy. Did my AFF at Hollister and then most of my A training at Elsinore. And I had a cutaway, very similar in the film, where I yell at the guy. It was one of my best friends. We had been going down there skydiving a lot. And I was trying to just be kind of like a, you know, mentor, bigger brother kind of thing. I just looked at him and I was thinking like Dan BC kind of vibes. I was like, you're going to have a malfunction, you know, like be ready for it. I wasn't trying to be a jerk, just like, you know, expected every jump, right? Jump number 76 for me, and go figure, I had the malfunction. It was my first malfunction, and I look up and my steering toggle is gone, and it was a super hard opening, and I just didn't even think twice. I just cut away. I knew everything was wrong. And I'm not going to lie, man, it spooked me. I should have got back up in the air that day, as you've probably heard. You know, if you get a malfunction, get up there that same day, in my opinion, because I didn't jump for 5 years. And
wow.
Yeah. And so I've got about 130 jumps now. That was jump 76. And shortly after COVID was when I was like, I started writing the film and was like, well, I'm writing this film. I got to start jumping again.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I can see how a cutaway can definitely mess with your mindset, I should say. I've had my cutaway, but I mean, for me, I couldn't go back up the same day because it was my rig. So it's, got to get that reserve repacked. Right. I was lucky enough, my drop zone, the operating manager there, he was on the drone already by the time I landed. And he was like, I've already found it, and I saw the four-wheeler already going that direction. Yeah. Before I landed. So they found everything for me. I mean, Nick Lott, he was the manager over at Spaceland then. And I mean, he was awesome. He just automatically on his drone looking. Of course, he had time that day. I know he was pretty busy a lot of times, so I got lucky with that too. Yeah,
that's a good point. It was your rig because I was renting. What are your thoughts on some people put the little Apple AirTags in their bags?
I have one in mine, actually. And it's funny because I walked up to Nick. I said, hey, I do have an Apple AirTag in there. He goes, it doesn't matter. I've already located it. And he was radioing it in. That's one of the nice things about a bigger drop zone like Spaceland. I mean, they got the ground crew working. For me, after the cutaway, I think my biggest fear was if I have a cutaway somewhere where it can't be recovered as easily, because you start thinking about, oh, wow, that money's gone. I know it may seem silly, but that's one of the things that goes through a lot of people's head. It's like, okay, I spent $2,500 on this canopy, and it can't go away.
What was your cutaway?
Mine was a line over and twists. So I spun back out. I figured I'd give it a try. As soon as I got out of brakes, I started spinning. So cut it away.
Hell yeah! What jump number?
Man, it must have been 600, higher 600s.
Oh, you didn't have one till then? Wow.
Yeah. I'm one, and honestly, I feel like I did it to myself. The week before, I had done about 4 or 5 jumps, and I think I was really tired by the time I was packing it for the day. Yeah. And the following week, on my first jump, it was a hop and pop. As soon as I'm out, bam, it's gone.
Wow. Hey, you hear about those people that have like thousands of jumps and never had a cutaway, and I almost feel worse for them. I'd rather, I'm glad I at least got one earlier-ish on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was lucky and spoiled because I always had somebody else pack, for most of my career. But
that's what I do, yeah.
I force myself to pack because, you go to a different drop zone, you don't know anybody, then you're kind of stuck with one jump if you don't trust yourself to continue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm jumping mostly at Elsinore. I'm super spoiled. I got my handful of packers there.
Yeah, but I noticed actually, so Elsinore is pretty close to Paris, right?
Yeah.
And you had Dan Brodsky in your movie, right?
Yes.
Hope I say the name right.
Yeah, I just go Dan BC to be safe.
Dan BC, yeah. So tell me about that. How did you get Dan to be in your movie?
Well, as you know, he's an absolute legend and just such a blessing to the sport. I love his mentality. And just since the day I got in, I mean, I read his book. I knew all about his story. I was just I admire the guy. He's such a great guy. And so when I wrote the film, I was like, I can't make this film without Dan BC. And I got him, and he's just such a good guy. He's like, come on down, bring me the script, let's talk. And funny enough, Dan had some acting aspirations throughout his life. And Dan actually wrote a script about his life that's phenomenal. I read it recently.
The book?
It's basically, it's like the book, but he made it a format for a film.
Oh, he did. Okay, cool. Yeah. I've listened to the audiobook myself, actually.
Oh, great. Yeah, above all else, right?
Exactly. Great book. Chuck Akers, the USPA president who's been on the podcast before, he's the one that actually told me about it.
Oh, was he last week? I think I listened to that.
Yeah.
That was great.
He was the one before you. Exactly. Yeah. So, that's how I was turned on to that book, and I thought it was such a great story, especially the beginning. It's like I can see how that can be a movie. It's like,
oh, totally.
The opening of that book is like, I could totally visualize it because as you know, I'm a filmmaker as well. I'm really a filmmaker first.
That was so crazy. I had no idea when I reached out, and to hear that was so cool. And I got to watch your film. The one that's
Flash
on Amazon.
Is the director's cut. That's on
Amazon
that's
Prime,
my passion
right?
film. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got it in my watch
aside
list.
from that, I got a lot of monster movies that we did for Sci-Fi Channel that are kind of cheesy monster. But yeah,
But I love those.
I
You
like
know?
making those. It's a lot of fun. We were shooting mostly nights, and we were shooting in Louisiana. So I mean, I was having a blast when we did those.
Yeah.
But my passion with sci-fi genre is really time travel and alternate reality movies, which is what Flashes is. It's about alternate worlds.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to check that out. It's in
Yeah,
my
for
watch
sure.
list. Yeah.
I want to get back to your movie though. You also had Andy Dick as a
Yeah.
as a cameo. Tell
What
me
a
about
great
that. How did
cameo.
that come to be?
Just a wild man. It's probably no, surprise to a lot of people, but man, he's so talented. Between action and cut, he will give you so much to work with. And there was a script, but you just give him an outline and let him go. And that's kind of how I like to shoot, anyways. Let's get what's on
Right.
paper, and then let's have some fun once we get that. But we had Andy in mind. I knew I wanted a fun cameo of some sort. I knew we didn't have the budget to get a bunch of big names or even one, really big name. But I wanted to get a recognizable face, of course. And I've always thought Andy was hilarious. And so, ironically, when we were doing our first table read, the character of Steve Bell said, "Hey, Andy's a buddy of mine." And so he gave me his cell phone number,
nice.
and we had a few calls, and there he was. And I thought he was hilarious. And what was really funny too was that that scene, at the end of the film where we drag him across the table, that was all Andy.
Wow.
Day he just goes, "Gary, I'm not doing this scene unless you drag me across the table." And I'm just like, "Dude, you ain't got to ask me twice. You want to get dragged across the table? Let's do it." Yeah.
Great actors do that. I mean, I've worked with a lot of great actors, and I mean, they bring so much more than what you have in the script if you let them. And that's what I think a good director does. You actually allow them to bring that character to life because
Yes.
they're really putting themselves in there. So
Totally.
that's
It's so
real
fun because
great.
they'll do things you never envisioned, right? And
Exactly.
I think, we chat briefly before. It's like 75% of directing is casting. I mean, that's
It
your
is.
job. If you just get talent, it makes your job so much easier. And it's so fun, to see what they do with the material.
For sure, man. I remember working with Christopher Judge, and he was it was actually 4 flashes, and in that movie, there's 3 different alternate worlds, and in each he played a different character. My big worry was, well, I've only seen him as Telk on Stargate, so is he going to be able to pull it off? And man, did he pull it off. I mean, we talked
Nice.
ahead of time on the phone. He talked about how he wants to change his appearance depending on the order that we're shooting. So he had a beard, and then he had just a goatee, then he had no facial hair, and then he was on point with each of those characters. And also, I feel like he was like, let me give this to you a different way than it was intended. So we would do the take, and then he just gave me a couple of different ones. And in some cases, I ended up loving those so much that we actually used it in the movie itself.
Right.
Yeah.
And some actors are afraid to do that because they know they don't have final cut, and so they feel vulnerable, So that's really
Yeah.
a trust thing, right? So he trusted you, and that's great.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I got to hand it to you. You did such a great job with the movie. I've done movies. I've
Thank
done
you.
small movies, and I know how hard it is to put something together on a small budget. And I mean, watching that, I know you had a tight budget, but you just really poured your soul into it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we really tried to stretch it. You know how it is. You gotta really be the resourceful. The ultimate resource is resourcefulness, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. And then, so as far as using Elsinore, how did that come about? You just already knew people there and just
Yeah,
talked to
I
the.
had a few buddies there, but nothing like super in. I got a really nice introduction to Carl, the owner, or I guess co-owner now with Josh, by one of my skydiving buddies, and that just made all the difference. And he gave me such an amazing deal, So and
Awesome.
he's like, "Go ahead, throw the sign in, do whatever you want." And he gave me this little section, and they were just amazing. They let me use the plane on the ground. I mean, I got really lucky with Elsinore.
Production value, right? I
Big
know all
time.
about that. You gotta have. I mean, you gotta fill that frame with something, and
That's
if you
right.
don't have something to put it in, and you're trying to make the audience imagine what it should be, it's really difficult.
Totally. Yeah, that's the name of the game too. I think you just said it, production value on lower budgets, and that's why they say, who's a friend with a fancy house? Who's got the Lamborghini? Who's got the airplane? What can you do?
And I mean, your drone shots, I already told you, I love those. It's like those add so much value, especially when you guys are on the motorbikes just going down the desert for, I
Yeah.
think it was for the ash throwing scene.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit. That was such an amazing shot chasing
Thank-
you guys down.
That was on the motorcycles, the dirt bikes when we're spreading
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
and,
dirt
and, and
bikes.
that's all Corey Molina. Big shout out to him. He was the drone expert. I know for the high speed chase one, we actually got a new drone for that scene. That was like a big drone. So he had like the mini drone, which he used a lot in the hockey rink. He had like his medium drone, which I think he was using on that dirt bike shot. And then he got this big drone that we were using on the chase stuff. But the dirt bike stuff was super cool, super meaningful scene to me because when my father passed, similar in the script, we went to a place called Carnegie Hills in Northern California and we spread his ashes. I have Carnegie Hills tattooed on my collarbone, also misspelled, which in the film, there's a joke on another tattoo that's misspelled. And so we were riding, just having a good time, dirt biking. Corey was shooting the drones. Ironically, I've been dirt biking my whole life. We got 2 flat tires on each of the front dirt bikes on the front tires shortly after filming. So thankfully we got enough early on. I've never gotten a flat tire in all my life of riding, and me and my buddy both got flat tires.
That's production for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what an emotional scene too, because right when we got there was a father and a son, the same ages my dad and I were when we were really at the heart of things. Like he was, I was probably the kid was like 10, 12 years old. And I had such a hard time with that scene, not crying throughout the whole scene. I was just overcome with emotion, but I think it kind of played into the scene well. So
I bet. And I think with doing this movie, you have immortalized your father's memory.
appreciate that. I think that was a big motivation to make it was for him.
Right.
Yeah.
So another part of the movie is about a lot of air hockey. So you're an air hockey player as well?
Yeah, roller hockey. I'm not huge into roller hockey.
Not air hockey. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roller
is
hockey.
ice hockey or roller hockey?
Roller hockey, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, like, step down from ice hockey, basically, just on rollerblades.
Okay.
And so, I've never been like a huge roller hockey player, but we did have a moment in my life in my younger 20s that turned out to actually be an incredible, fulfilling experience where me and my friends similarly created a roller hockey team. We played up in dry ice in Oakland, up in Northern California, and we got our asses kicked. Just the first 2 or 3 seasons, I mean, just horrible. The fact that we kept on was amazing. But we filmed the games. We studied our game film. We had our little sandlot practices, and we won the championship by like our 4th or 5th season. And it was so fulfilling and so bonding between all of us. And it was just an amazing experience. And in real life, we were called off consistently so that we could chant "Nobody beats off" consistently as our joke. And so that's why we have that in the film as well.
Yeah. So what about the other actors that were also doing the roller hockey scenes? Were they actually doing their own stunts? Or was that you had other people playing?
No, yes and no. Mostly everybody was doing it. I wasn't too concerned because it was, skydivers playing hockey. If it was like a professional hockey thing, I would have had to either cast professional hockey players that could act or train actors for 6 months on the hockey rink. And so what I did was I got everybody rollerblades and I connected with all the main actors, a few weeks before we started filming a couple times each and worked on their rollerblading. And when we were casting, I was asking people like, hey, can you rollerblade? It's not a deal breaker, but it's a bonus. And 90% of them were like, yeah, I haven't rollerbladed since I was like 5, and so it was a challenge. The hockey stuff was just a challenge in general because it was exhausting, and 2, it was difficult. And I'm so glad we scheduled it last because I tore my MCL skydiving, go figure, the Halloween before in 2020. Classic scenario, downsizing too fast and just came in hard on a landing. And so I hadn't done anything, that pushed myself physically since then, like not even golf, baseball, nothing. And so that was the first time I had a knee brace on and we scheduled it towards the end. And I'm glad we did because I would have been so discouraged because it was very difficult. But yeah, we had I casted 2 guys that were hockey players on the Blue Clouds rival team. And they helped out in many different ways a lot.
I see. How did you go about shooting that? Was camera also on rollerblades going around with you guys?
Corey's hilarious. He was on one of those little Segway things where, like, when you tilt your, he's got he's got like thousands of dollars of gear on him, just flying around the hockky rink. But he felt comfortable, and so
he must feel comfortable.
Yeah, and have great insurance or both, and we never put the camera on sticks once. I don't think once. We were always on Steadicam. And so, yeah, he was just flying around on that or walking around with the Steadicam.
Yeah, those Segway things are pretty cool. I remember I bought a one-wheel few years back, thinking I'm going to go ahead and learn to ride the one wheel and also hold the camera with the gimbal.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, I got good at riding it, but I never had the balls to actually hold one of my cameras while I'm doing that, because at any moment, if that, you know, they have this thing where if the motor fails or something, or even if I do something, you fall off that thing, and then now you got like $5,000 camera or higher.
Yeah.
Adding the lens and all that, breaking.
Right.
So yeah, I was like, this is just not for me. I'll hire a professional when I need something moving. You know, I'm more comfortable with a drone. I fly drones.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's definitely, it wasn't for me to do the one wheel thing at all.
Sure. And you want to
So
keep
a
the
lot of
camera
respect
moving.
for him being able to do that.
Yeah, it was really cool. And it worked well. You know, we needed that for the hockey stuff.
Yeah. I mean, definitely movement is important in those shots. And again, production value. You got moving shots, or you got something on sticks the entire time, just shooting directions. It's just going to take away from that production value.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree.
So what else about the movie can you tell me about? What else do you want to share?
Oh man, well, it's been such an experience. You know, we had an amazing premiere at the Fine Arts Theater in Beverly Hills this April, and that was beautiful. Just such a great event with people to celebrate. You know, it's out now on Amazon, Apple TV, Google Play, and that includes YouTube. And things are going great. You know, it's what a learning experience. I mean, this is basically my film school for my next film. You know, that's kind of every project, right? And
every project is, right?
yeah. So much I learn, and I look. You know, there's a million things I do differently, and a million things I'm super proud of. And I'm writing the next one right now, which is a baseball comedy. So I guess I'll be the sports movie guy. You know?
Will there be skydiving in that one too?
There might. I actually have a part in this little golf movie that I think we're set to film next year, and they've got me leading. They because they knew I was in it. They've got me leading some skydive stunts in that film.
Cool.
And so we should be jumping out in North Carolina, doing some fun stuff for that. So that'll be
That's
fun.
awesome, man. Yeah, when you put your passion as filmmaker and skydiver together, I think that's the way to live, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of why I started Skydive Sim. I mean, for me, back in the day, around I think it was my 65th jump. I can't ever remember if it was 50th or 65th, but I hurt my ankle on a landing, and then I was like, man, I'm scared. Like, it was only 6 weeks I was out of the sport, but I would come down and I'm like looking at the ground rushing at me. I'm like, oh, PLF, just roll into that ground, because I was afraid of hurting my ankle, and I thought it would be nice to have some kind of VR landing simulator.
And thank you for making this, man, because it's so great. And I want to hit on that as the safety part of it, you know. And because me, I have skydiving buddies that call me a weenie because I'm so safety oriented, and so I love, And why not? I'm like, I don't got to be cool, you know. It's like I'm already skydiving. That's pretty badass, you know. So I don't have to be this sketchy guy. And so, you know, your sim, not only is it super fun, super like real, super accurate, but like you just said, you know, what's the hardest part is landing. You know, that's where the most injuries and deaths occur. And so
exactly,
if we can have Skydive Sim that is, you know, as accurate as this is to practice our landings, I mean, that's amazing. It's
I appreciate
awesome.
that. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the landings and all that, because I had somebody actually on the store wrote a review that he's been a skydiver much longer, and back in the day they had one stage flares, and then when he went back, they have two stage flares on these canopies, and he was having a hard time with that. So he said he used the jetpacks in the sim to get back up and just be in final and just land and practice that two stage flare. And he said, my landings are rocking now, which made me feel really good. It's helping people and entertaining people at the same time.
Dude, you're saving injuries. And at that point, you're probably saving lives. So kudos to you, man. That's badass. That is badass.
It's definitely good. I mean, I really have a lot of respect for you, because I know it takes a lot to take your passion, being a filmmaker, and get everybody together. I just know what goes into that sort of work. And I mean, how many hats do you think you wore on that?
Oh, man. Well, I wrote it, I produced it, I directed it, I played the lead, I casted it, I co-edited it. And then, those are the only credits that I actually gave myself on screen.
Right.
But
There's always more, right?
Exactly. And then at some point it gets ridiculous. But I handled all the props. I handled all the wardrobe. I did the set dress. You could go into all that, but at that point it's just kind of like whatever. That's. And I will say though, the hardest thing of everything, in my opinion, is producing. Jesus Christ, because you think about what is a producer. A producer does anything, whatever needs to be done. And, you try to do it logically, you try to do it on budget, yada, yada, yada. Writing to me is kind of love-hate too. It's so rewarding, but sometimes you got to turn off the lights and make yourself freaking write and puke draft it and then get it better. But I write and I produce so that I can direct and act.
That's great. And it's a lot harder to produce when you have so many other hats to wear too, because you have to get the location or go get, even sometimes you have to pick up the food for the people.
Everything and anything.
Right?
Totally.
And then you have to put yourself in the mindset of, okay, this is what part of the script we're in and I'm acting, so I have to be in this mindset now. So, man, respect to you. It's
funny to touch on the food and the mindset. So for me, every day, I came in producer mode up until about a half hour before we were going to shoot. I'd kind of lock myself somewhere, get on some music, go through my script, go through my shot list, and consciously try to transfer from that side of the mind to the other, because I was so in producer mode that it was time to transfer over to director and actor mode. And the only thing I wanted to touch on the food was that I like how you mentioned that just in general, because to me as a producer, director, that's the most important thing of the entire day, is that people are fed and they're fed well.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I have done both as well. I used to shoot a lot of music videos back in the day, bigger and smaller ones. And on the smaller ones, I was making sure that, okay, who was going to go get the food? Normally, I was the one that had to act as crafty and go get the cooler, get ice, get snacks, and then order lunch, all that stuff. And then I have to, at the same time, be ready to be directing. So it's tough, because it's one job versus the other. Producer's more worried about the money part of it, and as a director, you want to get the best shots you can get, but now you got to switch sides and say, okay, should we do this or should we do this? What's going to be to the advantage? So
you're arguing with yourself.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, it is. So I appreciate it, and I know you know it because you've been through it, and it's it's war, man. Making movies but it's so rewarding, and it's you've got lots of passion projects, and I admire that, and so it's cool, man. We get one life where we got to be healthy and go after what we want.
That's why I was excited when we talked. SkyFly, the movie, I think I had heard about it before, actually. I think I saw it on Facebook, on one of the skydiving groups, and I had been meaning to watch it, but then I forgot. And then when I heard from you, I was like, oh, man, I forgot. And I watched it that same night that we talked.
That's so
cool,
and I
really enjoyed it, I must say. I did a few jumps that day when we were talking, and then I came home, and man, that was great to end the day with. Watch the movie, and I highly recommend any skydiver or non-skydiver really watch the movies. SkyFly, the movie. Yeah,
and I appreciate that so much, man. That's so great to hear. That's
for
so
sure,
cool.
For sure.
That's so cool.
Is there anything you want to add, or you want to maybe get back with me at another point and we can have another conversation? Because this has been awesome.
This has been great. I'm down to link up anytime. I just thank you for having me on. I love the sim, and I just thank you for everything you're doing. So I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. I'll put a link to your website in the description as well.
Sweet.
And then maybe from there they can find where to watch the movie. But sounds like it's pretty much every streaming platform.
Yeah, the only thing I would notice
is
it's one word. There's a lesson learned for any filmmakers out there. Don't make up words and don't combine words, because it's harder to get the algorithm to catch on sometimes, unless you're
SkyFly, you're saying that 2 words would have been better?
Yes, because that's the one pushback I've gotten from some people. They go, hey, I can't find it on Amazon. 10 times out of 10 is because they're searching at SkyFly 2 words. So
it's funny you say that, because Skydive Sim, I originally did it as one word. And everybody was writing Skydive and Sim. And one time when I had my earplugs in, and I think Siri, it just kind of announces things. And I heard Siri say, from Skydiving Sim. And I was like, all right, it's time I make this 2 words. That was it. I was like, okay,
thank you,
2
Siri.
words.
Yeah, that's a good call, man. Yeah. So that was a hard lesson learned. I learned it, anyway, SkyFly, one word. I'm glad you made Skydive Sim 2 words.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'll catch you soon.
Hell yeah.
Great talking
Thank you, man.
to you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
See ya.